Hey everyone, my name's Kevin Gray. I just wanted to take a couple minutes and talk to you about some advanced MIDI controls that I've recently learned in Ableton Live. So while looking through YouTube tutorials, I came across this video from multitracks.com about pre-programming looping sections in Ableton, but they only showed it in arrangement view. So basically, he talks about if you wanted to do a welcome or read some scripture or whatever, and you just wanted to continue looping this section of the song, then he just added this MIDI note down here, and it just goes back to this this intro marker here, and it'll just keep doing that until he hits the button to cue the next marker, which would be verse. And I inquired if it was possible to do that in session view, because that's what I use for worship, and I think that's what a lot of people end up using for worship. He said, yeah, sure, absolutely. And then this guy down here was like, well, I don't really understand how that would work. And I've played around with it some, and I think I figured out a way that would work. And so let's go over here to Ableton, and I'll show you what I've done. So I don't have the multi-track for it, I just have the loop, so it's just pretty much a loop with the cues, pan left and right. And normally, I just run it just like this.
Intro 2, 3, 4.
And it would just play through the whole song just like that. So to get it to loop a certain section, this is what I've done. I've broken it down into different parts of the song. And how I did that is I just copied the loop and the cues, and I threw them over here in arrangement view. And I added these markers in just for ease. You don't have to do that if you know the song well enough. But I added these markers in. So I basically also I created this extra track of cues down here and named it alternate cues, because if we're right here and we're gonna repeat the intro, well, this is gonna say verse. So all I did was I copied this intro and I threw it here, and then I just did the same thing. So I moved everything up one marker. If that makes sense. And then I clicked here basically and highlighted this whole section, and that's all that plays for intro. You can see right here, it's all that plays for the intro. Then for this is the actual what you would play for the intro. So I highlighted and copied that, and that's what is playing here. You can see that section there. So all of this I just renamed just because I'm OCD like that. Pretty much what is showing in cues is what it will say at the end of the cue, basically letting you know what's coming next. And what it will say in alternate cue is what it will say if you want to repeat it. So let's dive into the MIDI part of it. I created two MIDI tracks here. One are named next and one I named repeat. The next one, so basically I know I add a MIDI note in to cue the next scene down, or whatever scene I want it to cue, and I add it in at a certain time. So for this one, I know it's 1 bar before I need to go to the next scene. So I added it on the MIDI note here on 1 and 3. And how I assign the MIDI note, well, I've got a Looptimus controller, so all I did is I went in prior to and I just clicked on each of these scenes and assigned it a MIDI note with my Looptimus. Then I just corresponded the MIDI note down here with whatever the MIDI note here says. But let's just say you don't have a Looptimus or any other MIDI instrument that you can use, and you just want to assign it without using any of that stuff. So what you would do is just choose a MIDI note you want it to be, and you can't have any MIDI notes overlapping or it might mess some stuff up. So for instance, I want this scene to be D sharp -2. So you make sure you click on the MIDI channel you're wanting to work with, this one here. So you click on that one, and and you would go down here to your MIDI graph, and you'd scroll down till you get to whatever you want it to be. So then you would assign the MIDI note, right? So I'll just go ahead and I'll take this one off so you can see. So this is the scene I want to be D sharp minus 2. I'll delete that. So this MIDI note here will trigger D sharp minus 2. D sharp minus 2 will then trigger that scene. So I'll just go ahead and delete this MIDI note, and I'll show you what I do. So this scene here is going to be approximately 8 measures long, and how I figured that out is you can go over back to your arrangement view. Let's just zoom in and see what we're working with here. Sorry, my printer's turning on. So you go back over here to arrangement view, and you can see, my verse cue starts here on measure 10, but the section starts on measure 2, so 10 minus 2 is 8. So we know this is 8 measures long. So what I need to do when I'm putting this MIDI note in, first and foremost, I need to go down here where it says length and click on this and put 8, because I know I need it to be 8 measures long. Alright, and then somewhere in the 8th measure, I need to find D sharp minus 2. You can see it over on the left side, over here. But you need somewhere in the 8th measure, D sharp minus 2. And it doesn't have to be long. I just like it a little longer so I can see what I'm doing. You can make it as small as you want it to be, but so there it is, D sharp minus 2. Alright, and I want to assign that MIDI note to this scene here. So what I'll do is I'll just play this scene, and at some point before the counter reaches this MIDI note, I'll need to hit MIDI assign, the MIDI mapping, or I can just hit Command M and then click on the scene I want it to assign. So let's just do that.
Verse 2, 3, 4.
Alright, so you saw that as the marker went across that MIDI note, it assigned it to this channel. So now when I play this scene, when it gets to the end, it will automatically go down to this scene here.
Verse 2, 3, 4.
Alright, so that's what I do for the next, and obviously you don't have to do every single section of the song. Let's say you know that you're only going to do a welcome or whatever on the intro, and that's the only section you're going to need to loop. Well, then in that case you can just do it for the first 2 here, and this scene can just play the verse through the rest of the song. You don't have to have it for each individual section like I've done here. So that's what the next does. And let's go here to the repeat. Let's say I need to repeat the intro section. Well, okay, if I look at my MIDI map here, I see that D minus 2 is what triggers this scene here. So this note here is D minus 2 because it's the next. We want it to go to the next scene. So this note also needs to be D minus 2 so it can just trigger this scene over again. And once I do that, I know that the marker reaches this MIDI note, it will just re-trigger this scene here. But the problem is, especially if you're running them side by side like this, well, which MIDI note is it going to play? Well, down here you can see the track activators. I've got them turned on for the cues and the next, and I've got them turned off for the alternate cues and the repeats. So you can either assign a note on your MIDI controller, or maybe your keyboard if you're using a keyboard, to turn these on and off. And I selected one MIDI note to turn each one of these four on and off at the same time, and I chose, what is it? I chose G7. So basically, when I hit G7, watch what happens to these track activators. This one will turn off, this one will turn on, this one will turn off, this one will turn on. So when I start playing this track here, and sometime in the middle, before it reaches the last measure, if I want to repeat it, I just need to hit that button to select alternate cues and the repeat, and then it will just keep playing that over and over until I hit that button again to go back to the regular cues and back to the next to move on with the rest of the song. So let's hear how that sounds from the beginning.
Intro 2, 3, 4. Intro 2, 3, 4. Verse 2, 3, 4.
Alright, so you saw sometime while it was playing, I hit the MIDI button to switch the cues and the MIDI notes, and once it repeated once, I decided that was enough. I hit it again and switched back to go through the rest of the song like normal. So that's pretty much it. That I moved kind of quickly, and if it was a little bit over your head, feel free to drop a comment and I'll do my best to explain and get back to you. If there's another way to do it, then feel free to leave a comment and explain how you like to do these things. This great thing about Ableton Live is there seems to be 1,000,001 ways to do everything. So this may not be the best way. This is just one way that I found that works. Typically this isn't how I run a service. I'll just run the regular looping cues, and if I have a specific spot I know I want to repeat ahead of time, then I will go ahead and I'll set it up like this, so we can run that during the service. But that's kind of something you need to know ahead of time. It takes a little bit of planning. If it's something you're wanting to do on the fly, then you'd have to set it up a little bit differently. But that's all I've got. So leave a comment. Thanks. God bless.